Let's talk about the invisible engine that powers our daily lives. You know, the system that makes sure the lights stay on, our roads get fixed, and society, well, functions? That whole system is public administration, and we're about to dive into how it all works. It's a big question, right? And sure, we think of presidents and prime ministers, but the real power, the thing that shapes our world day to day, often lies in the vast, complex machinery that actually puts their decisions into action. And that machinery? That's public administration.
So, what is it exactly? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like the government's operating system. It's all the essential code running in the background that makes everything else possible.
At its heart, it really boils down to two huge jobs. First, it's about taking the laws and policies made by politicians and actually turning them into something real. And second, it's about managing all the public services that come from that. You know, everything from national parks to Social Security. And this is where you see the huge split from the private sector. A company, it's all about profit, and they answer to their shareholders. But public administration, it's driven by the mission of service, and its ultimate boss is us, the public. That one difference changes the entire game.
All right, let's jump in a time machine for a second. Because the early thinkers in this field, they had a very, very specific vision for how government ought to run.
You have to remember, this was the age of the factory, the assembly line, the steam engine. So it's really no surprise that people looked at government and saw another machine, one that could be tweaked and optimized for perfect precision, incredible speed, and absolutely zero waste. This obsession with optimization gave rise to a truly revolutionary idea: scientific management. The core belief was almost utopian. If you could just study any task scientifically with a stopwatch and a clipboard, you could find the one single perfect way to do it. It was a holy grail quest to eliminate inefficiency. And the promise here was immense. Proponents like Frederick Taylor argued that this wasn't about squeezing workers. He believed perfect efficiency would create so much wealth that everyone would win, from the top brass all the way down to the person on the assembly line. Now, paired with this was the idea of bureaucracy. And look, I know that word gets a bad rap today. We all think of red tape. But the original concept was a game changer. It was designed to replace messy systems based on who you knew with a rational, consistent, and fair structure. The rules were the rules, and they applied to everyone.
I mean, it all sounds pretty good on paper, doesn't it? A perfectly efficient, logical, rule-based machine for governing society. But there was a massive oversight, a ghost in the machine that nobody had really accounted for. And that ghost was us. It was people. The next great leap forward in how we think about administration came when we realized that organizations aren't just machines. They're incredibly complex social systems. And this is where human relations theory just completely flips the script. All of a sudden, the focus shifts. It argues that productivity isn't just about the perfect process. No, it's about motivation. It's about morale. It's about how people feel about their work and each other. Workers weren't just cogs. They were human beings.
This just blew the doors open to a whole new world of questions. Suddenly, the most important things to study weren't time and motion, but stuff like, what makes a great leader? What actually motivates people? How does information flow through an organization? And what do we do when people, disagree?
You can see this new focus perfectly in Chester Bernard's work on communication. He argued that communication isn't an afterthought. It has to be a formal, reliable system. Everyone needs to know the channels, and everyone needs to be able to trust the information they're getting. It sounds kind of obvious to us now, but back then, it was a profound shift in thinking. And then you have true pioneers like Mary Parker Follett, who totally reframed how we see conflict. The old machine model saw disagreement as a system failure, a bug. She came along and said, no, that's not a bug, it's a feature. For Follett, conflict wasn't a problem to be squashed, it was a creative engine that could lead to even better solutions. So we've gone from machines to people, but the evolution didn't stop there. The next logical step was to zoom out even further and look at how the entire organization fits into the world around it. The mid-20th century was just an explosion of new ideas. Systems theory taught us that you can't just tweak one part of an organization without affecting everything else.
The ecological approach showed us how the outside environment, politics, culture, the economy shapes a public agency. And comparative studies let us learn by seeing how different countries tackle the same problems. Suddenly, public administration wasn't happening in a vacuum anymore.
Then comes rational choice theory. Now, this is a really powerful and sometimes controversial idea. It suggests that if you really want to understand how an organization works, you have to assume that everyone inside it, from the top to the bottom, is making calculated decisions to get the best outcome for themselves. And that brings us pretty much up to the modern era. The world has changed so dramatically in the last few decades, and public administration has had to race to keep up. Think about it. The rise of the global economy, a huge push towards free markets. All of a sudden, the old, slow models of government started to look really outdated. People and their leaders started demanding more efficiency, more responsiveness, and totally new solutions. And all this pressure created two major competing paths forward. On one hand, you had new public management, which argued that government should basically be run more like a business, focus on efficiency, market ideas, and treat citizens like customers. But on the other hand, new public administration pushed back hard, saying the real goal isn't profit, it's social equity and democratic values. It sees us as owners of the government, not just its customers. This tension is still a huge deal today. And of course, the modern administrator's toolbox just keeps getting bigger. We have specialized fields like development administration, which focuses on how to build effective governments in emerging nations. We've borrowed powerful ideas from the business world, like Peter Drucker's famous management by objectives, to get everyone pulling in the same direction. And maybe most importantly, we have the rise of information management, how to navigate our totally data-driven world. So after all this theory, you might be wondering, why does any of it really matter? Well, just look at the sheer scale of it all. We are talking about budgets in the trillions of dollars, millions of public employees, and literally thousands of regulations that structure our society. Getting the theory right has massive real-world consequences for everyone. What's so clear is that this field is always on the move, from the perfect machine, to the human-focused organization, to the complex global systems we have today. This whole journey leaves us with one critical question. As we face down huge challenges like AI, climate change, and global pandemics, what new ideas and new theories will guide the public servants of tomorrow?